Hey everyone, welcome back to Chat B2B, the podcast that gives you a front row seat to AI in B2B marketing. I'm your host, Andrew Rao, co-CEO of Intercept, and on this show, we chat with enterprise marketers who are building and scaling AI use cases. Today, I'm joined by Patrick Vuong, who's the Director of Product Management at Moderne. Now, he spent years at Microsoft inside the GitHub Copilot world at the leading edge of how AI is changing the way software gets built. And now he's focused on AI agents, building that backend infrastructure that helps these agents work reliably and consistently at scale. Patrick and I get into what's a harness, why does it matter more than the model itself, and what does it look like to design a team with humans at the center, surrounded by AI factories to do incredible work. Lots of great stuff ahead. If you like what you hear, don't forget to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. This is Chat B2B. Let's get into it. So Patrick, you spent years at Microsoft, inside GitHub Copilot most recently, before you had moved on, and you've become the first director of product management at Moderne, which is a big move. What made you make that jump?
Yeah, I think throughout Microsoft, the streamline of it has been working with developers, and the last year has been really focused on how AI can essentially evolve the SDLC, so the software development lifecycle. And we've already started to see benefits of it because developers are feeling more efficient. AI is making writing code 10 times faster, and now developers are shipping more than like 51% more pull requests.
And Patrick, just one quick thing on that. You said AI making writing code 10 times faster. We always read these things, and it's just, I mean, it sounds like this is a real benefit. Like this is 10x is real, right? Like that is a true benefit of this. That's amazing.
Exactly, because it's like the developer is like the architect, and then you have all these agents doing the execution. But it's interesting. Recently, at our most recent internal conference with some of our top customers, we were talking about like the shift of the SDLC, and a lot of them have shared that before the bottleneck was how fast can you ship code out,
Right.
and get it done, because before they didn't have AI tools. Now that part is being accelerated, and now it's like human capacity on the code reviews.
Right.
So it actually switched a little bit. Now they're getting so much code. And then I think the piece of it is there were two research points that is showing the type of code that's coming out. So Stack Overflow said 66% of developers are right now frustrated by the AI output.
Right.
It's almost right, but not quite.
Mm.
So you can't just automatically approve the pull request just because you wrote it with AI. Now there's like pieces you have to make sure there's no hallucinations, understood the right context.
We got to be accountable, right, for the output. We can't blame our agents.
Exactly. And then the second thing is the DORA reported in 2025. So this increase in PRs, but they saw 54% more bugs. And essentially, this bottleneck where you're now having the developers sit and focus on these code reviews is preventing some of these frontier businesses to reach ROI at scale with AI.
Right. And that seems to be a big push now, which is what is the ROI of AI? And there's more scrutiny as opposed to before it was like, if it's got AI in it, let's go. Now it's, let's evaluate because people are burning through tokens pretty quickly. And I think it was Uber that had said they had burned through their full year's budget of their token budget in April.
So it's funny that's exactly why I decided to join Moderne, because they're thinking about this quality problem where it's actually factored into three different walls.
Right.
One is first think about like an input output where we actually look at the code base first. So the agent can go get other context like all these .md files, but the agent is really reviewing your code base.
Right.
If your code base is not up to date, then it's not AI ready, and it's hard to blame the agent because the foundation is the first piece, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say we get past the code base and the code base is AI ready. Then we look at how agents work, like throughout the agentic loop, where they go discover, they plan, and they go verify and execute.
Yeah.
The only thing is agents are just like humans, where a lot of the stuff is non-deterministic. It's
Right.
probabilistic. So
Yeah.
let's say, Andrew, you have two agents, one repo, and you ask it to go search
Yeah.
for something. Both of them won't go the same way,
Right.
which then creates an opportunity of like, let's say a minor hallucination in the demo might not be that bad, but imagine doing this at enterprise scale.
Yeah.
Oof. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where the problem can happen. And then because it doesn't do things in a deterministic way, it can spend loops where it's burning agent tokens, as you were saying.
Yes.
Like, as you mentioned, there's companies that are essentially going through their AI budget this quickly.
I see two big implications there. One, from a security standpoint, which is if it's probabilistic and it's doing it different ways, you know, I would imagine there's a greater chance of like misconfiguration or just, you know, code errors,
Exactly.
right? That open up doors, which is one problem. And I think, like you had said around efficiency, because these tokens are heavily subsidized today. And so when we all have to pay market value or market rate for these tokens, I think we're not going to talk about this token maximizing tokens anymore. It's going to be, how do you maximize token efficiency as opposed to
Exactly.
just pure token volume?
And so to play off that, this is why now we understand that there's a quality output issue. How Moderne looks at it is we can help you throughout the whole journey. One, to help get your code base ready for AI. And then
Yeah.
secondly, how do we help make your agent efficient?
Yes.
We essentially want to change the way agents go about their workflow by providing them these things called lossless semantic trees, recipes, and agent tools that essentially change the way they work.
So I get why you made that jump, because I feel like Moderne is almost creating a category, if you will, of around, okay, we all have agents, and we're going to dig into different meanings of that, but you need agent infrastructure. You need to make sure that agents can operate reliably, consistently, as you said, quality, security, efficiency, all that good stuff. I feel that we are all talking about this, but this is one of the first times I've heard that there's actually a solution to making agents perform more deterministic as opposed to probabilistic. So tell me more on this, the lossless semantic tree and recipes. And I feel like just kind of maybe we can break down one at a time and just how it works exactly, because this is really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. So I think when we first start at like the problem statement, like
Yeah.
two problems we're seeing is how agents can work reliably and how
Yes.
they can do it precisely. So
Yep.
how we can change it in a deterministic way. So let's take the first one, the lossless semantic tree.
Yep.
It's essentially how the compiler sees the code.
Okay.
And then the lossless semantic tree helps provide that understanding of the problem.
Okay.
So we see a lot of tools work on text. They grep, they pattern match, and they essentially approximate through AST. But text matching breaks the moment you go to a different file boundary. And this is why the solution of a lossless semantic tree is super interesting, is because it's essentially a compiler accurate model of your code. So full type resolution, symbol attribution, cross file understanding. Think about it as a way where when an agent reads the LST, it's not guessing about the code. It knows like the truth. This is where it is and everything.
Got it. Okay. So it's a direct map of your code base so that it understands exactly which fountain am I drinking from, and it's the exact same every single time, right? Like it's pulling from the exact source, and it's not making an inference. It's okay.
It's almost like the blueprint of it.
Very cool. Got it. So that helps the agent sort of navigate in a way, right?
Exactly.
Okay. And then what does the recipes do?
Yeah. So a recipe is super interesting too. A lot of times when we have agents go and execute, and we want to guide it the right way, we use like prompt files, right?
Right.
But a recipe is not a prompt file. It's a program, so it's code where we can
Okay.
harden it. It's
Yep.
auditable, and it's deterministic. So think about it as let's say a Java 25 migration,
Mhm.
right? We get it right this one time, and then we test it, and then you can scale it across all these different repos, and the agent will reach for this recipe via the CLI or an MCP, and then
Yep.
execute it the same way every single time.
Huh. So it sounds like Moderne has cracked the code on how do you get agents to operate consistently, reliably, and get deterministic behavior as opposed to that probabilistic behavior that we're seeing.
Exactly. Which then,
Amazing.
if we go back to that problem statement, it gives the confidence for the developer to approve this pull request because of the three things you said. And then secondly, it also gives the confidence to the developer to scale this out more than one repo.
Right.
We're built on scale. And it's interesting. A history or how Moderne came to be was we used to have, and we still have it now, is it was humans that were creating LSTs on their code base and then running recipes. Now in the agent world, instead of the human can ask using natural language, migrate my code base to Java 25 to the agent. The agent will then use the LST and then execute the recipe. So we just swap roles.
Interesting.
And now anyone can do it because now in the past, you were actually, the human was executing it. Now you can just ask to do that whole thing at scale with natural language.
It really is empowering to think that as somebody who is, let's say, non-technical, just understands process really well, can just explain what they want. And it can, like, if you can literally create what you think, you can create any
Exactly.
idea. It's just a crazy moment we're at. I've never
And
seen so many people in Claude Code as an example. And for the first time ever coding, just using Claude Code and vibe coding, a bunch of stuff.
And this is what I like about it, where Moderne is set up, is if we look at like the tech architecture,
Yeah.
you got your LLM, you got your agent, but where we sit is almost like a harness for
Yes.
the agent.
Yeah.
And essentially, it could be Claude Code, it could be GitHub Copilot, it could be any agent. But when they leverage Moderne as a harness, we're able to help change their output to deterministic, and then we're able to help it actually go through the agentic loop in a very efficient way. So token efficiency.
Right. So then for most marketers that aren't thinking about necessarily the back end infrastructure, right? Which I think is a critical piece of it. And to a marketer that maybe thinks agents are, well, I think most don't really have a clear definition because everybody calls everything agents. It's like they can think about it as like, feature within Copilot or what have you. So they're sitting sort of a layer above all this at like the inference layer of just give me this and tell me that. Can you just help us understand what is happening beneath the surface? Like, why is this such an important moment right now? And what's happening just more on that back end infrastructure that maybe we should just be aware of as a marketer?
For sure. So I think that first layer, it's looking at the agent as a tool, right? So for most people, the conversation is around which copilot are you using, which agent, which model, because that's the visible layer, right?
Exactly.
But how we're looking at it is essentially agent as the audience and how we equipped it with like the right tools and harnesses, so that essentially it can get done. So I think for marketers, business professionals, is thinking how do you almost onboard this agent with the right tools so it can go and execute the work it needs to get done, as if you were doing it, right?
Yeah.
So it's putting on that mindset that, oh, if I had essentially playbooks, similar to like recipes that I can run every single time, this would be amazing.
Yeah.
How Moderne has looked at it is, okay, we know there's two things that the agents spend a lot of their tokens on:
Right.
searching and getting context.
Right.
So what we did was, okay, let's go build these two agent tools. One of them is called TriGrep, and
Okay.
it essentially is a tool that the agent can go and pull on, where it gives them faster symbol word code search,
Okay.
which means they read fewer files and burn fewer tokens, but they get exactly what they need.
Okay. Yeah.
Another thing is context. So we have this thing called prefink, and it gives them pre-computed architectural context before they even start.
Got it.
So no tokens are used at that point.
Oh, I see.
They get the context from the very beginning. And then we have another tool called changelog, which actually goes across the portfolio to make sure the agent realizes there's no duplicate work or there's no wrong sequencing. And all of this is available to the agent via MCP as long as they pull on like Moderne, so they can search, get the right context, and then when they execute, essentially they're the ones matching the scenario to a recipe so that they
Right.
can do this execution.
So I think this is a really good point, because I think marketers are not always thinking about scale, and they are thinking about, okay, I could vibe code this agent or this tool and it's good for me, but they're not thinking about, while that might give you another 20, 30% in efficiency, that doesn't get us the equivalent of the 10x gains that we're all chasing, right? You mentioned like developers are already experiencing that, but as marketers, we're like hungry for that. We're like, how do we get to the 10x stuff? And it's a good reminder that we need to think about, how do you onboard these agents? How do you give them the right tools, the right infrastructure to perform scalably so that a department or a team or like a group of people can use the agents and get the same quality? I think that is that is the key for us. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. And I think on that side, it's interesting to look at like the marketing audience and the developer audience.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of lessons that can be learned from what developers have gone through with their agentic tooling to what marketing is about to go through, I think, with agentic tooling.
I agree. I actually think it's a very rare instance that we've got a bit of a crystal ball, because the developer audience has already kind of gone through this in a way, right? And marketers are all thinking about, how is AI going to, disrupt in a lot of ways, change the way that the flow of work. We should be thinking about what happened to developers and what developers are going through, how they're responding as this cue for us. So maybe on that note, knowing that, again, you had started on the marketing side, right? And then moved to sort of core product management. What does the marketing AI stack not have that maybe the dev AI stack already has, or even just broader like comparisons between marketers and devs today? I feel like that's an interesting one that marketers should just get closer to and spend more time.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's really interesting. I think it boils down to the structure around the agent.
Mm.
Okay. Because if we look at it today from a marketing or from a business side, agents are used as chatbots,
Yes.
prompts, or generators. While when you look at the developer side, how they're using agentic tooling is how it transforms portions across their process. So the SDLC
Yes. Yeah.
versus just as a tool.
Yep.
So how I see is marketing is about to go through what devs have gone through with their agentic tooling, to the point where Moderne is coming in and building these harnesses to get deterministic outputs. And I think it's in like 3 different chapters.
Okay.
So I think chapter 1, and I'm curious, I'm actually excited to see where this goes for like marketing and for like business folks, is the models that were created is that they had a domain expertise.
Yeah.
So the models that were helping developers is that they knew C#, knew Python, new
Right.
types, symbols, dependencies.
Mhm.
Right now, I'm trying to think what is the equivalent to it, right? Which is
Right.
where's like the brand sentiment or the best way to write a copy or that knowledge base for that domain, I think can be built. But the developers just had that first,
Yeah.
right? So I think that was like chapter one, and you can see it even when that was out. It was still used more like a tool, but it wasn't fully a teammate just yet,
Okay.
right?
Just a tool at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then after that phase, I think it's where we are right now, which is essentially how these agents had these models, but based on what we were just talking about again, is the non-deterministic output,
Yeah.
the scale, the token efficiency, is how do we provide tools to the agents? So it's almost like treating like it went from a tool to now a teammate.
Yeah.
And how do we help our teammates
Yep.
use deterministic skills across the board? Right now, from what I've seen, at least within marketing, it's mostly prompts
Yes.
still. And once it gets, I think, this model and then it gets this deterministic tool, you'll almost start seeing peer marketers, similar to how developers have peer like AI programmers for these tools. And then I think the most important part is they've looked at these agents and these tools that they plugged it into a process. So a very clean way of how you ship code, or in the
Yeah.
marketing world, how you do marketing. Because devs have the software development lifecycle:
Yeah.
plan, code, review, test, deploy. If you're able to plug in an agent in each of those parts within the lifecycle, knowing that, okay, this is what the outcome and this is what humans used to do, plus having this deterministic output so that you can trust it, so we can get past that code review component. I think that's what marketing is missing, because there's so many different disciplines of it. Maybe it's standardizing and finding a process and then plugging the agents in and having
Yeah.
deterministic outputs.
I find one of the points of feedback or points of discussion with marketers is that, this hesitancy to codify any workflow because everything is changing. And they're like, well, I don't want to pour concrete on this yet because I don't even know if this is the right model or the right process. I think some of that is maybe a bit of a cop-out in that, like, there are still stages of workflows that we're probably going to do. How you do each stage is going to change. But then I also, we live and breathe this, where, yes, approaches are going to change. They're going to evolve. And so maybe the sequence of stages could change. I don't know. How did developers kind of sort through that of, you need to build processes to scale, but the processes themselves might change. So what's sort of the developer mindset on that?
So it's interesting. I think that's the second piece of it, which is these processes were built in based on governance and policies on this is how we ship code.
Yeah.
But what we're seeing in difference is the sequencing of agents and handoffs. So we still see this is the outcome and what you have to do for like test coverage, or for at all these different stages, but we're not relying on one agent or one prompt to do it. It's multi-agents where it's the sequencing, thinking of it, where I think as developers have gone through this evolution of just agents as a tool to a teammate to a fleet where you become like an architect, it's changed the way we even like see agents. The process still stays the same because the process was built so that you have your compliance checks and all that. Like, if now putting on like the marketing hat, there was a process built so that nothing goes out there that is like, I guess, non-governed.
Right.
Now it's just retransforming how you go about it so you still hit that output. And then it's the thinking that it doesn't have to be one agent.
Yeah.
It's as if you're what we say in like the developer world is how you redefine the SDLC when you have agents going through it.
Yeah, redefining the software development lifecycle. It's almost like we need to redefine the marketing campaign lifecycle, or the customer lifecycle, to be sort of truly AI native, which is interesting. I want to pressure test this framework with you because as you were talking about, again, building systems and scalable approaches to drive impact, we've been talking a lot about this marketing AI maturity curve, where if you think about sort of like, maybe a bit of a hockey stick, where that first chunk of it, first half at least, is this what we would call sort of like single player mode, where I've got a copilot, and I'm using prompts and it's making individuals 10, 20, 30, maybe even 50% faster or better at their jobs, more productive. But on the other side of that curve is where you really start to get more value. And that's kind of the 10x stuff, is where you build multi-agent workflows and the multi-agent orchestration. And to us, that's where we're helping these enterprise tech companies, just from a marketing standpoint, unlock that. Because I feel that as a general observation, 90%, if not more, of marketing teams are stuck in that left side, which is like, I'm using a prompt. I'm using it's single player mode. You need to get to multiplayer mode to get the real gains. And I think if we don't get there, we will not get to the 10x impact, the real ROI of AI. What's your thought on that? How does that align with what you see just generally in the market?
Yeah, no, I see that completely. And at least I got to live through that transformation with the developer audience side,
Yeah.
where it goes back to that's what we talked about, where you can go through just having prompts to get one task done.
Yeah.
But when you go and zoom out a little bigger and plug it into a process, so into a life cycle, then you're not looking at it as task one, task two, task three that I need to prompt. Now it's what agent can autonomously get this execution done, and then the sequencing of these agents. And then it's new skills that start to come in, which is, okay, if that's happening, again, back to the deterministic output, what do I provide tools for my agents so that the quality is predictable? And then secondly, very important to get into the last two stages you were talking about, is the governance. How do you then start pulling in the audit trails for each of these agents so you get human approving the direction, not the output?
Pat, you mentioned prompting a few times, and in relation to how marketers are currently interacting with AI. How important do you think the prompt will be in, let's say, a year from now? Is this something where, it becomes less important because the agents have more for lack of a better word, pre-installed context? It's got these LSTs that understand exactly which fountains I go to get the right sources of information. Or is it always going to rely on the user to have the best prompt to be able to get the best output? What's your perspective on that?
So it's really interesting. I see the prompt is moving away from the human into the agent itself as the system of agent. So this is what we at least see today as those .md files. But we are moving to so actually a step back. The reason why we need to move to scale is to see the ROI, right? For that to happen, there's these things called dark factories, where a whole function of work, let's say, again, in the developer world, maintaining your Java upgrades all the time, where you have the right system prompts, so the agents are just executing.
Yeah.
You have the right predictable tooling for the agents that harness, and essentially it's fully at scale where the human can take a look and track it with the governance. But there's a point where they operate it as like a software factory. It's really interesting because the appetite has changed from 3 years ago when LLMs first came to life. I feel as if humans were very aware that there's flaws and there's hallucinations. But as agents have gotten better and better, the belief has swapped into the agent will get there one day, which is really interesting. So this is where I know the output and the focus is these dark factories. And when I call it dark factories is because the human can govern it, but all the execution and decisions are happening within the agent side. But because it's deterministic and you can predict it because the agent has the right tools, it's almost as if having this whole software or this factory completing something.
That's fascinating. Completely
Think about
different
it
way to
from a
think about
marketing
workflow.
world
Yeah.
where, let's say, a product comes down and they need website copy, but you'd never have to touch it again. It just, instead of a prompt, it just goes in. These agents already have their own system prompts. We put the right deterministic tooling, and then you still look at the quality of the output, but everything just has that sequencing, the handoff. It's all agent to agent. That could be the future, and that's where I'm starting to see the trust in this technology is.
I feel there's a debate whether models will continue to get better. And as you had said, there's a belief that just the models will get there one day, versus the other side of the discussion is, well, that's just a way to rationalize enterprise value and ROI and or future enterprise value for these, for these frontier organizations. What's your thought on that? Do you think that we're going to get there one day, or is this a rationalization?
I think it's re-looking at the agentic anatomy where you realize a model and an agent needs tooling.
Right.
So what I believe is these models, context windows will continue to expand.
Mm-hmm.
I think the indexing or the fine tuning of these models will continue to get better and better. But I think for us to reach that enterprise scale, it's realizing that these agents and these models, just like humans need, are tools. There's a whole layer underneath there that will make the agent efficient, and that will make the agent have deterministic actions, because without deterministic actions, I don't think we'll ever reach scale because it's unpredictable.
And you can't trust it. If it's not consistent, you're not going to trust it.
Exactly.
Amazing. And can you go back to the word harness and just explain that for those that might not fully understand that? We're hearing more and more of harness. What does it mean? And just with overall context on that one.
Yeah, for sure. Like in the lens of harness and an agent, we see it like agent tooling, where I think the easiest way to put it is the agent will execute, but the tooling makes sure that it gets the outcome that it needs to be. So it puts it on the right track.
Right.
And it's this harness that goes around this agent to keep it on the right track, so that you're able to essentially trust it at scale.
Right.
Like for me, it's realizing if you want multiple fleets of agents going on the cloud in your workstation and everything to do a ton of stuff, you'll need these harnesses to make sure they're on the right track and executing it in the right way. And then I think the next step is figuring out, okay, where does the human check in to make sure the human is still always in the loop? Because you could be having all these agents run, but human is the architect of these agents.
It's interesting because it makes me think that the question of will the model get better is almost irrelevant, in that if the models don't evolve from where they are today, just with, to your point, on the right harness, the right infrastructure, the right tools,
you can scale.
We can unlock a ton of value already. So it's almost actually irrelevant. I mean, the models I think will get better. Maybe they don't get 10x better. I think they will actually, and actually be scaled beyond that. But even if they don't, just to be able to have the right sort of setup for these agents, I think there's a lot of untapped potential. Sounds like
another really good example is how LLMs, agents, and these harnesses or these agent tools, like Moderne, can change even security. So think about it as the model or an LLM, as we've seen by these frontier labs, can expose vulnerabilities. So red teaming.
Yeah.
In the past, or now where we're at, is have the LLM expose the vulnerability, have your current agent plus the right tool in like Moderne can run a recipe to remediate that
Yeah.
vulnerability. And because
Yeah.
it's a recipe created, you can then scale it.
Mm.
Like where I'm starting to see is, at least in the world of Moderne agents and LLMs, is how you can create your LST so you have the context for the agent, then create a recipe to go and solve the problem that you're
Yeah.
working on,
Yeah.
harden it because it's actually a code change, and then scale it out.
I actually almost see this too as a way to test the model performance, because if everything else remains constant and you've got a deterministic model, you can judge model performance in a way of like, if you're, because you can swap it, you can use whatever model you want, I presume.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. That's cool. So it seems that, and you had mentioned this too, is Moderne is one of the first to really focus on agents as an audience itself. And we think a lot about that in terms of this like dual audience track system that we're preparing for now from a marketing standpoint, which is you got to market to the human, right? And the decision, the buying committee, technical, non-technical, all the rest of it, circle of influence. But you now also need to market to the agents that they are using, because the agents have really become sort of an intermediary that are influencing that decision. We're actually running some research now on how IT decision makers and business decision makers are using AI in that process, and it's very interesting because it's still early. We're still collecting data, but we're seeing there's sort of a polarity. Some that are like very AI native that are just, that's the first place they go to, as opposed to others are, yeah, maybe I'll use it to assemble my stuff, but not actually, I don't necessarily trust it yet, because again, it's not deterministic in many cases. I don't know, just what's your thought on whether marketers should be thinking that way in terms of like both audiences and the importance of winning the agent recommendation as opposed to just the human?
I think this is across any AI builder, where one is understanding what your agent and your LLM can do today, and the importance to equipping tools to the agent to get to that deterministic value so that you can scale.
Yeah.
So I think that's one. But then the second is understanding how the agent reaches for tools. So it's really interesting. We've been doing research and finding out the behaviors on how does an agent, because you can have a list of, like, let's say tools right now are MCPs, right? You could have a list of all these tools, but how do we have the agent pull the right tool at the right time?
Yeah.
It's funny because you're not marketing it to a human, you're marketing it to an agent.
Yeah.
And it's trying to expose, this is the right scenario for my tool.
Yeah.
So go and grab it. And because you're one layer down, how do you go one layer up to explain this is why you're getting the tooling so that you can get the output you want? It's a really fascinating like area, because I think the better that you understand how an agent works, and all agents work differently, the more you realize, okay, how do I expose our tooling and our products towards it?
Yeah. And we're even thinking about too, like different types of content that's optimized for agents. So for example, we see that vendors that have strong technical documentation tend to do better with models, because models can actually look and say, does it integrate with Salesforce? Does it integrate with Azure? Does it integrate with, these different ecosystems or even point solutions? And then the model's got a higher degree of confidence to recommend because it's got that technical documentation. So it's almost, it's still, I think everybody's figuring this out, but it is a purpose-built content track specifically for agents. I think that's needed.
On top of that, it's actually it's a fine balance, because when agents are looking for tools, that takes tokens. When it's looking at .mds, it takes tokens.
Yeah.
How do you do this efficiently? And this is why some of our stuff is, how do we run it and get the context before the agent even starts?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're in a world where it's, again, I'm looking at the process. And once I understand the process, we're building in pieces that are transforming how the agent works, just like how the agents have transformed how humans work across it.
when we look ahead, Patrick, when you think about organizations of the future, you had made a comment to me before around it's humans at the core with, surrounded by AI factories, right? Which I think is a really interesting concept. And as a marketing leader listening to this, that it's thinking about team design, that's getting pressure to either freeze hiring or potentially reduce their teams. How should they be thinking about optimizing the team structure, the team design, with that philosophy that you had mentioned of humans at the core with agent factories to be able to scale outputs and stuff and in deterministic ways. So,
Yeah, my thought is it's treating agents just like employees, making sure they're onboarded correctly, making sure they have the right context, making sure they understand their roles to the point.
Yes.
Even when I look at what I was working on Microsoft with the intelligence layer of work IQ,
right.
the more employee IQ you can provide to these agents, the more you'll have a successful fleet that the humans can architect. And then I think the change is more to your staff and your team. Can they put on the hat of being the architect, thinking about the bigger vision, re-architecting, knowing that, okay, if this is how the process will be, how do I get to that process and the handoffs and all of that? So I think that's the change in how like the human works.
Yeah. And Patrick, for somebody that not only again runs with the developers and the engineers, but also the marketers, right, and the sales teams, for somebody listening to this going, this feels over my head, this feels too technical. How realistic is it, do you feel, for a non-technical person to be successful in this era and think about, I got to understand how agents work and I got to, double click into maybe some of the backend to understand the tools and infrastructure. How realistic is it for somebody non-technical to really kind of dig in and be successful here? What's your thought?
I think all the barriers have came down, and I think this is why we've seen an increase in output in almost anything with agents. Like again, in the dev world, increasing code to now is more of the code reviews. Yeah, I think it's two pieces. I think now the language of agents is natural language.
Yeah.
Right. So one is honing your skills on how to talk to an agent. Mm-hmm. Then I think the second part of it is how you design an agent. When I explain about looking at how an agent works, you can already start to pull out patterns that it will go search.
Yeah.
It will then develop you a plan. It will then execute. Then it will verify. Yeah. What are those things that you can do even from a non-technical standpoint to ensure those 4 stages are optimized?
Yeah.
What's the tooling you need to expose to it? What do you need to put in their system prompt? Those are the things that you can think about. And then I think the most important thing is, are you applying an agent to the right scenario, right? Again, to a non-technical standpoint, let's say you're trying to take research to marketing copy to an asset. Those feels like 3 different agents that you can do handoffs on.
Yeah.
Right. And then it gives you scoping for your agent of how you write it, or at least the system prompt within it. Yeah, that's how I think about it, that I think anyone can now run agentic workflows, and taking lessons from what we do in the developer audience, where I think the future is, how do you get things deterministic and how do you get things to get quality so you can scale these agents?
Yeah, agreed. I align with that, and I agree that we've never been more empowered than ever before to be able to access these tools. Like I said, I mean, how many people I know that have never written a piece of code and is now they live in Claude Code or GitHub Copilot, right? Like it's incredible. And I think it's just this like exercising critical thinking. If you can think through a problem and know sort of what are the key things to go solve, to your point, the language of agents is natural language now. Describing it, this is exactly what I need to do. So I think it's just maybe getting over that mind obstacle of this is technical.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it's having just a pure curiosity of what's happening in the space, right? We went from like autocomplete to multi-file edits to agents to parallel agents to now agent with tooling to now fleets. So it's interesting.
Yeah. So on that note, I know you're a busy guy. We'll ask you one more question here. You think through to the end of the year, what do you think is the biggest unlock or milestone that we will hit with AI in 2026?
I think it's the realization that for agents, how do we get to deterministic outcomes?
Yeah.
However it is. And then I think the second thing is how do you have agent execution on more than just one piece? So in the developer world, more than one repo. I want one agent to go do multi repos. Again, that it's a building block, right? You only do multi repo when you know that you can trust it.
Yeah.
So build that piece first. So I think it's those two pieces that will happen, and then I'm excited to see after that what is the output of that, right? And then knowing it all comes down to that quality piece, how even that gets automated, looking at diffs and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, I say if we summed it up in 3 words, it's deterministic and it's scaled agent execution.
Well said. Pat, thank you so much for joining us on the pod, and excited for your journey at Moderne, and we're going to be watching closely and probably even leveraging some of your tools for our agent infrastructure. So appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much, Andrew. We'll see you soon.